Imagine if the most bloodthirsty gangsters in the world kidnapped and threatened to kill your child. What would you do? Would you ignore it? Would you sit around hoping these gangsters come to their senses? Would you root them on? Or would you do everything you could to rescue your child and knock down every obstacle in your way? Well, two of the biggest and most murderous gangsters are not just holding your child hostage, they're holding the world hostage and threatening to kill millions of children, if not all the children on the planet.
The president warning the risk of nuclear Armageddon has not been this high since the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Risk of nuclear Armageddon in today's massive explosion of the only bridge connecting Russia with the annexed territory of Crimea.
The House has approved a $40 billion aid package for Ukraine. Money for military.
Largest single military package yet for Ukraine.
We want to see Russia weakened.
Russia's annexation of occupied territory in Ukraine.
Armageddon, nuclear Armageddon.
Armageddon, nuclear war.
Это не блеф.
It's at this moment that Biden, when speaking at a Democratic Party fundraiser in New York, said, "We have not faced the prospect of Armageddon since Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis. I don't think that there's any such thing as the ability to easily use a tactical nuclear weapon and not end up with Armageddon. For the first time since the Cuban Missile Crisis, we have the threat of a nuclear weapon, if in fact things continue to go down the path they are going. We're trying to figure out, what is Putin's off-ramp? Where does he find a way out?" Now, you might think that Biden is really sounding the alarm about nuclear war in order to prevent it. And from what Biden is saying, you'd think Russia is the only one pushing things in this direction. This is complete bullshit. I have 4 points to make about this. 1. Biden is preparing you to accept the possibility of a nuclear war that could end humanity. He compares the situation to the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Well, the president at that time, John F. Kennedy, said the danger of nuclear war with Russia was 50-50. Think about those odds and the fact that we're in a moment like that now. But does Biden say that there's absolutely no way that this can be allowed to happen, and he'll do everything in his power to back off from the brink, disarm his nuclear weapons, and work with Russia to stop this? No. He says this is the path things are on. Now, think about his use of the term Armageddon. This is a word that comes from the Bible and refers to the final battle between good and evil. And of course, we're all supposed to assume the US are the good guys in this scenario. Armageddon means a catastrophic conflict, a battle that could end the human race and destroy the world. And that is exactly what could happen if a nuclear war broke out between the US and Russia. Each of them have thousands of nuclear weapons, and many of these are hundreds and even thousands of times more powerful than the ones the US dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which instantly incinerated tens of thousands of civilians in the fireball and shockwaves, and killed tens of thousands more from the lethal radiation. In other words, these two countries have more than enough firepower to annihilate much of life on this planet many times over. The fact that the leader of the only country ever to use nuclear weapons, armed to the teeth with nukes and the capability of using them anywhere in the world, is talking in terms like these should be an electric shock and a wake-up call. But most people have their head in the sand, acting like it's not even happening. Or they're just hoping it works out, acting like there's nothing that can be done about it. Or they're egging this on, calling for Biden to go even harder against Putin. This is completely irresponsible. It is gambling with the lives of billions. Do you really want to look back from amidst the rubble and radiation, if you survive, and regret not having done more to stop the rulers of this system from doing what they clearly said they might do? Seriously, people need to wake the fuck up. 2, let's look at why Biden is saying that if Russia uses a tactical nuclear weapon, we could end up with Armageddon. So-called tactical nukes are usually described as smaller, with a more limited range of destruction. So how could that lead to Armageddon? For one thing, Russia and the US have tactical nukes that are actually more powerful than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Second, and even more importantly, we are dealing with two gangster imperialist countries battling each other for world domination. And just like the gangsters in the street, you have to show strength, not weakness in the face of the enemy. If your enemy infringes on what you consider to be your turf, not only do you have to retaliate, if you want to achieve dominance, you have to escalate. For example, we've heard retired General David Petraeus float out this possible response to a Russian nuclear strike on Ukraine.
Just to give you a hypothetical, we would respond by leading a NATO, a collective effort that would take out every Russian conventional force that we can see and identify on the battlefield in Ukraine and also in Crimea and every ship in the Black Sea fleet.
Do you really think the US could escalate in this way, dealing crippling blows to Russia's non-nuclear military capabilities without Russia escalating further, using the one game-changing weapon they would still have? This kind of talk is playing with fire. And you hear this kind of thing all the time from people who've been indoctrinated to think like the US imperialists. People say, we can't back down because that's letting Putin use nuclear blackmail. This is the logic of a system that's willing to destroy humanity before it backs down. As Bob Avakian put it, humanity cannot afford any longer to allow these imperialists on any side to continue to rule the world and battle over who will dominate in this situation, with the very real and dire threat this poses to the future and the very existence of humanity. And by the way, just who the hell is this we in these kinds of comments? Do you really want to see yourself as part of the worst gangsters in human history? Of course, if you do nothing to stop them, if you turn your head away or keep your head down, then I guess you actually are part of the we that's going headlong in a potentially horrific direction. But is that really who you want to be? Is that who humanity needs you to be? Think about it. 3. When Biden says we are trying to figure out what is Putin's off-ramp, where does he find a way out? This makes Biden seem like the reasonable one, and Putin is the irrational aggressor. But someone should ask Biden, where's his off-ramp? If he's so concerned about a way out, why does he keep funneling billions of dollars of weapons to Ukraine? Why doesn't he call for immediate peace negotiations? Why doesn't he declare unconditionally that the US will not use nuclear weapons? In reality, both sides are deeply committed to their strategic objectives, and neither side can easily back down. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, the US has been expanding its military alliance, NATO, further and further east, seeking to encircle Russia militarily. Meanwhile, the Russian imperialists are trying to challenge the dominant position of the US and prevent Ukraine from joining NATO and further encircling Russia. Now, with this invasion, the US sees a big opportunity to weaken Russia and has been backing the Ukrainians to this end.
The House has approved a $40 billion aid package for Ukraine. Money for military.
Largest single military package yet for Ukraine.
We want to see Russia weakened.
The fact is, neither side has an off-ramp from their conflicting objectives. Both sides are pushing things to an even more dangerous situation. And here I want to briefly critique something Noam Chomsky said on Democracy Now! Earlier this week. In this interview, Chomsky did sound the alarm about the danger we face and made many insightful observations. But there was a big problem. Let's watch.
Either the great powers will find a way to accommodate and work together on our common problems like global warming, nuclear war, pandemics, and so on. Either they will find a way to accommodate or we all go down to disaster together. It's as simple as that.
If those are our only options, it is not looking good. Why? Because these divisions between the great powers are not just a matter of the whims of leaders like Biden, Putin, and Xi Jinping. Yes, they make policy decisions and can be compelled in certain circumstances to change those decisions. But fundamentally, these leaders are presiding over and dealing with the imperatives of a capitalist imperialist system driven by the competitive chase for profit and the commandment to expand or die. This leads to wars for resources, for markets, for control of trade routes in strategic parts of the world. In other words, hoping they find a way to accommodate and work together is a recipe for disaster. In point of fact, there is another option: revolution, to overthrow and replace this system with a completely different socialist economic and political system, based on meeting the needs of humanity, not the profit of a few. This is not the easy option, but it is the only option that can deal with the root causes of this. And it is possible. But while you're learning about and digging into this revolution, it is unconscionable for anyone to stand aside from what's in front of us now. Which brings me to point 4. This whole dynamic needs to be urgently and radically changed. Instead of standing by passively, hoping for the best, or even worse, cheerleading for this dangerous escalation, people need to be challenged and think deeply about the truth of these words from Bob Avakian. All this emphasizes why it is vitally important for the masses of people in this country and other countries allied with it, as well as in Russia, for people everywhere to finally and fully wake up now, recognize the real and profoundly heavy stakes involved, and act in accordance with our actual interests, the interests of all of humanity, demanding that this war in Ukraine and the involvement, direct and indirect, of the imperialists on both sides in this war be stopped before it not only causes even greater suffering for the people of Ukraine, but possibly escalates into a far more terrible conflict, which causes massive destruction and death on a whole other level, and even possibly poses a threat to the very existence of humanity itself. For a start, spread these slogans far and wide. Scream them at the top of your lungs. No US-NATO war with Russia. No World War III. It's this system, not humanity, that needs to become extinct. We don't accept their future. It's time to get organized for a real revolution.